Okay, hello. This is Naomi and Sarah here, and this is our beautiful stats project. Woohoo! Here it goes. So, for background, we started by looking at the national survey that asked students how they felt about their math class. We were interested in seeing how students at Kahila might respond to the same questions, and we wanted to compare those responses and tests if the variables were independent of each other. Here we did chi-squared tests, and interestingly found that several variables seem to show an association. Additionally, we were interested in seeing how responses at Kahila might compare to students nationally. We did chi-square tests again, though none of these showed an association. Students' responses in the national survey were different from those in the Kahila survey. Bam! Okay, so the first variable that we wanted to look at was gender, and we wanted to see if there was an association between gender and all the other variables. So we did chi-square tests to compare these variables. Some of these examples were thinking math class is a waste of time and seeing yourself as a math person. So we tested this null hypothesis and this alternative hypothesis, which were gender is independent of key outcome variable, or gender is not independent of key outcome variable, and some association is seen. So in order to do chi-square tests, we needed to check assumptions and conditions. So the first was the value in each cell is a count. Both counts and percentages are given. Counts and cells are independent. Individuals were randomly selected and their results are independent of each other. And expected frequencies are at least equal to 5. In some cases, there are fewer than 5 counts because the survey size was small. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Sometimes we recoded the data and merged several of the categories together to avoid this problem. In other cases, we just noted it and said that it might alter our results a bit. So before we look at the graph, I just want to say or clarify the variables on the graph. So the first answer choices for the first 7 questions for each variable is strongly, disagree, disagree, agree, strongly agree. And then the answer choices for the 7th question, which is grade, is 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. And then the answer choices for the 8th question, which is gender, and the last question is male or female. So here's the graph of the results of our chi-squared test. So along the top we have each of the variables. Okay, sorry, Mr. Kelly. I got the giggles. Okay, along the top we have each of sorry. I'm just gonna start over. So here's a graph of the results of our chi-square test. And along the top we have each of the variables comparing against gender. And it shows the chi-square test, the degrees of freedom, and the significance level, which is right there. If we look closely, 2 variables seem to show an association when compared to gender. The first one is this: when an assignment is very difficult, you stop trying. And then the second one is you think math class is a waste of time. So looking at the graph above, all of the variables that we didn't mention give high p-values. Sorry, I didn't finish. Sorry, Mr. Kelly, I didn't finish. So above the alpha level of
0.15, which means that they are not statistically significant. So it means that gender compared to all those other variables are independent. At the 5% alpha level, a p-value of 3% suggests that there's an association between gender and thinking that math class is a waste of time. The data shows that very few females strongly agree that math class is a waste of time, but none of the males strongly agree. You can see that because if you look at the graph, there's a little blue segment for the females and there's no blue segment for males. Additionally, a larger percentage of males strongly disagree that math class is a waste of time. We're looking at the purple and the green sections here. Overall, more males find math class a waste of time compared to females. Okay, here's the second case where we saw that there was an association between two variables. So at an alpha level of 0.15, we were given a p-value of 10.8%, which suggests that there is an association between gender and when an assignment is difficult, you stop trying. So if we look at the data, more females disagree, which means that they would not stop trying on difficult problems. Um, we can see that in the purple, green, those are the strongly disagree and disagree categories. Additionally, a greater amount of males strongly agree that they would stop trying on a difficult assignment. That's the blue, whereas fewer females strongly agree. Good. Overall, it seems that women are less likely to stop trying on a difficult assignment than males are.
Because females are better.
Okay, then we examined a new variable. So we started looking at the relationship between seeing yourself as a math person, and then we compared that against all the other key outcome variables that we had looked at initially. So we did another chi-squared test. Our null hypothesis was that seeing yourself as a math person is independent of all the other variables, and the alternative hypothesis is that seeing yourself as a math person is not independent of those variables, and there's some association seen there.
So before doing a chi-square test, we needed to check assumptions and conditions. So,
Oh god, we checked the same ones that we checked on our. Okay, so here's our chi-squared table for these variables. So, um, once again, we actually ended up recoding this variable. You see yourself as a math person because two of the categories gave very small counts. So that's why it says recoded. And then when we look at this, we can see that the first one where we see an independence, or the first one where we see a association, is between thinking math class is a waste of time and seeing yourself as a math person. Um, and then the second one being you are certain that you can master the skills being taught in your math class and seeing yourself as a math person. And all the other ones show that the variables are independent with seeing yourself as a math person because the p-value that's given is very high. Okay, so essentially all except for the two cases I just mentioned before give very high p-values above the alpha level of 0.05, which means they are not statistically significant. Thus, gender and all those variables are independent.
just kidding, we didn't mean gender. We meant thus recoded seeing yourself as a math person, and those variables are independent.
Okay, so then here's a graph of the first case where we see associations. So we're comparing you think math class is a waste of time and you see yourself as a math person. So at the 5.05 alpha level, a p-value of 0.033 says that we must reject the null hypothesis that the variables are independent. Instead, it suggests that there is an association here. So if we look at the data, it shows that students who see themselves as a math person also overall consider math class to be a good use of time. By contrast, most students who do not see themselves as math people also think math class is a waste of time. Okay, and here is a second case of the association. So, at the 5% alpha level, a p-value of 0 says that we must reject the null hypothesis that the variables seeing yourself as a math person and being able to master the skills in math class are independent. Instead, it suggests there's an association. So when we look at the data and the graphs, it shows that students who see themselves as math people also believe that they will be able to master the material in their math class. In contrast, students who do not see themselves as math students are also less certain that they will be able to master the skills in class. Okay, then the third part of our project was we compared the counts between our survey and those between the national data. So again, we did another chi-squared test. This time our null hypothesis was that the survey results at Kahila were independent of the national survey. So that means that the Kahila students respond in the same way as students do nationally. And the alternative hypothesis was that Kahila survey results are not independent of the national survey. So response in the Kahila survey shows that Kahila students respond differently than students do nationally.
Okay, so again, before we did chi-square tests, we needed to check assumptions and conditions. So they were the exact same ones that we did before. So the first one is the value in each cell is a count. Both counts and percentages are given. Second is counts and cells are independent. Third, individuals are randomly selected and their results are independent of each other. Fourth, expected frequencies are at least equal to 5. In some cases, there are fewer than 5 counts because the survey size was small. And sometimes we recoded the data and merged several of the categories together to avoid this problem. In other cases, we just noted and said it might alter our results a bit.
Okay, so when we did this and we compared the national data with our survey data, in every case we found that we got a very low p-value, which meant that the Kahila survey and the national survey were independent and there was no association seen. So for example, we put in 2 of the cases. So in this one we were comparing when an assignment is very difficult, you stop trying. And so when we were looking at the Kahila survey and the national survey, we got a pretty big chi-squared, the degrees of freedom were 4, and the p-value was 1.865 times 10 to the negative 35, which is very, very small, so they're independent, no association can be seen. Okay, so in this case, once again, we got a chi-squared of 1.769, degrees of freedom 3, and the p-value 0.62, so again, no association is seen between the variables. Okay, so to conclude that part of our survey, we tested all of the variables again, and found low p-values in each case. So that's comparing the variables from the national survey and from our Kahila survey. And then given that we found these low p-values, we must reject our null hypothesis at the 0.05 alpha level. And in each case, it means that we found students in the Kahila survey respond differently than those do in the national survey.
Yay, thanks for watching!
Woo!